Hi, everybody, and good afternoon. I'm News 13's Amy Hoyt. We are live in our News 13 newsroom on Harrison Avenue. Today is the day that we talk about Buddy Check as we attempt to fight breast cancer together because early detection saves lives. And each month we bring you a special guest, someone who can tell you about their experience so that you may learn from it and be ready if this should ever happen to you. Today's guest is a familiar face to the entire Northwest Florida area, not just Bay County. She is Tracy Johnstone. And Tracy, it's good to see you.
See you. Thanks for having me on.
Now let's talk. First of all, everybody knows you from McDonald's. You and your husband owned most of the McDonald's in Bay County and across Northwest Florida in recent years. And tell us a little bit about that and how is Tim doing?
So Tim is doing good. He has been a tremendous support and a great caregiver throughout this process of, active treatment as they call it. But I was diagnosed initially in September, got what I call my final diagnosis the end of October. Was fortunate enough to be able to go to MD Anderson, for that second opinion. And coming home from that trip, I tell people I didn't have a feeling. I had a knowing that it was time for us to sell the business and focus on my treatment plan, getting better, and focus on family.
Now, you're a pretty strong woman, but still, when you hear the C word, that has to be hard. Were you shocked by it?
Yeah, I was shocked many times over, honestly. That first, local physician, the surgeon that did my biopsy, after he told me we found breast cancer cells in your lymph node, I don't think I heard anything else after that.
Yeah.
Kind of you drive home in a daze. And then even getting that real confirmation at MD Anderson, I felt like then, okay, this is real. I cannot talk my way out of this. I can't work my way out of this. I need to deal with it head on.
Had you found the lump yourself?
No, actually not a lump in the breast in the most traditional way. I'd had a wellness check, just a physical, done the basic blood work. There was a little outer range number on there for an inflammatory marker. And of course, I'm Dr. Googling it, immediately. Right. And then checked my lymph nodes, which is what it said to do, felt under my arms. And very much to my surprise, there was an enlarged lymph node there, actually two. So I immediately went to my physician. We did the biopsy and lo and behold, it was breast cancer cells presenting in my lymph nodes. But to this day, even with just one more chemo left, they cannot find the primary in the breast, which is somewhat unusual, but it's not unheard of. So that's how I found it, is in a lymph node.
And that's the one thing I think we all think there's going to be a lump right in the middle of the breast, but the lymph nodes go up under your arm, and I think we forget that.
Right, we do. Yeah. And I just forget that that's connected to breast tissue per se, but also that's the first place a breast cancer would travel is to those lymph nodes. So
had you had a mammogram leading up to this?
Mm-hmm. I'd had a mammogram. I was about probably 4 or 5 months behind on my next mammogram, but my last mammogram was clean. They saw nothing. The mammograms post finding the lump in the lymph nodes, 3D ultrasound, every fancy mammogram available, still to this day do not show a primary in the breast. So we're not shrinking a tumor in the breast right now. We are shrinking that enlarged lymph node.
Does it run in your family?
It does not. And that was another surprise, is because, I've answered no to that question my whole life. Right. And then when they told me it was positive, I'm like, this can't be right, because it just, it's not in my family. And I think I put too much weight on that, probably, of thinking, well, it's not hereditary for my family, so I'm not, I'm out of the woods. I need to focus on my cardiac health.
Yeah, I think we all do that. Unfortunately, as women, as busy women too in the workplace.
Right.
How did you tell your husband and your family?
I went to that appointment to get my results from that initial biopsy by myself. I just assumed I have an infection, something insignificant, and came home and sat in the chair and just said, I told Tim, I've got some news. And at that point, I wasn't sure if I was totally devastated, and I felt like I needed to get my affairs in order moment, because that's what it feels like no matter what they tell you. It feels that way at first, okay, this can't be right. This can't be real. So you bounce back and forth between those two things.
How did you make the decision to give up operating McDonald's?
Yeah,
that had been your life.
It had been my life. It was that knowing that this is what I needed to do. I realized quickly I've got a 1-year runway ahead of me of active treatment that is going to take a great toll on our family and my body for sure. And then I think also, honestly, part of it was our folks, our people. We've been together forever. My supervisor's been with me 25 years. I really didn't want to take them on this journey with me. They deserve better than that in a way. And I think when you're running an organization like that, and you are the face of the organization, both externally and internally, there's a lot incumbent upon you to be able to maintain that. And I knew I just couldn't do that. And I was very visible in McDonald's Corporation, working on national teams, leading the COVID response for the U.S. restaurant system, was the incoming chair of the Women's Operator Network. I knew I could not do all those things and do it well, and that I needed to make a clean break.
At what point do you decide to go to Houston, which is where MD Anderson is located? Because I know you did research, because you're that kind of gal. I know.
I am, yeah. Way too much probably, but yes, I did. I think after getting that biopsy results, then conferring and meeting with my general physician after that, and, it was kind of the, okay, now what's next? And there was a lot of difficult what is next because of not having the primary. So once I really realized there was a lot of investigation to do into what was going on, I think that's when I said, let's at least go get a second opinion at MD Anderson. Right. So we went to do that. And of course it was just an impressive, process there of and how expedient it was. And then I don't know, driving to the airport again, I said, I need to do my treatment here.
It felt right.
Yeah, it felt
We're looking
right.
at some pictures now. Who's this gentleman?
That's my youngest son, Thomas. That's on one of our flights out to go back to Houston to do a chemo treatment. So I've been, again, incredibly fortunate that I've had the family support that I've had, of having my children and my husband and good friends of mine be with me for some of these treatments. That sounds, like a simple sentence, but the depth of the feeling of that when people are there to support you is tremendous. So
now, we see that you lost your hair. Did you shave it first when you knew it was going to come out?
No, I didn't. I did a process called cold capping, and you literally put on a cap that's got refrigerant in it, and they hook you up to the equivalent of an air conditioner or a freezer, and it freezes the follicles in your hair. So you're freezing those to protect them, and hopefully they don't absorb as much of the chemo, which is what causes your hair to fall out. So I lost I said I had male pattern baldness inside of 2 days. And that's not unusual either, but the point of the cold capping goes beyond just not losing hair. It's also about protecting those follicles so you do get healthy regrowth and quicker regrowth.
Now, a lot of the women we've interviewed over the last year went to wigs. Did you ever use a wig?
I have one good one that looks like a good one, but I'll be honest, at this point, it doesn't even look like me to me now. When I purchased it, it really, okay, that's my hair replicated, but I've become so accustomed to this, and I've come where I just kind of own this. This is what it is. At first, I worried about looking sick to my grandchildren with no hair, but now it's like, this is just the journey I'm on. This is my story. And I'm just going to walk this road and, get dressed up to go to dinner. I'll wear the wig. And then I have another wig that looks exactly like a wig, much more like a toupee. So I've sort of put that one to the side. So,
did you lose any other hair? I know sometimes that falls out too, eyelashes and such.
Yeah, lost quite a few of my eyebrows, pretty much all of my eyelashes, which have just started growing back. And then you lose all the hair on your legs as well. So you go from shaving your legs to not shaving your legs.
Is that a bad thing?
It's not a bad thing at all.
Maybe that's a good thing.
Yeah, there are some small upsides to it, but just really strange how much your body changes during this process.
Now, tell me about the chemo. Did you do that first right away?
In the kind of breast cancer I have, which is HER2 positive, the protocol is you do chemo first, then surgery, and then radiation. Often that is inverted, depending on the kind. But I have HER2 positive, which means I am hormone receptor positive. So there is a protein that the cancer cells, which are really just mutated cells that have mutated in my body, that they absorb that protein. And the HER2 treatment, Herceptin, is the name of the drug. That drug blocks that cells from being able to absorb that protein, which doesn't allow them to continue to grow and replicate. So
is this weekly?
It's
monthly?
Every 3 weeks. So yeah, I'm getting Herceptin, Perjeta, and then 2 other regular chemo drugs. So the Herceptin's not too bad. It doesn't make you sick like chemo, but chemo definitely makes you sick. It's a toll on your body, from head to toe.
Now, did you have any support going through this? Any other women that you knew, maybe friends that had cancer?
Oddly enough, I don't think I've ever had a close friend with cancer. I have engaged with a social worker, which is part of my care team. I'm at the hospital there, a nutritionist, and then there is a support group that you're added to if you want to be. I've done a few of their Zoom calls. And then there's a HER2 positive Facebook group that if you are HER2 positive, you should join. I've learned a tremendous amount from them. Sometimes it's just what questions to ask. And there's also a chemotherapy support, group on Facebook. Those communities on Facebook have really given me a lot of solace. It also, most of the time, makes me realize this is really bad what's happening, but it could be a lot worse when you hear other people's stories. So it makes me very grateful most of the time.
And the one thing you've learned, and I've learned just by meeting all of our breast cancer survivors, is that there's a bunch of different kinds of breast cancer.
Yeah, I had no idea. I just thought cancer was cancer when this all started. I had no idea there were so many different kinds. And it's called typing your cancer. And that being done well is incredibly important because it dictates what your treatment is going to be. The drug that I'm getting 15 or 20 years ago was not approved by the FDA yet. It had been years and years in development. So prior to the drug Herceptin existing, 40,000 women a year died of HER2 positive breast cancer. That's a staggering thought in terms of if this had been diagnosed in me 20 years ago, it was not a survivable cancer. That's not that long ago, 20 years. So certainly I have a whole new perspective on cancer research and I'm incredibly grateful.
That's a frightening statistic.
Isn't that something that many? So yeah, I think, I count my blessings every day that I can sit there and get those drugs when I go.
Now, you have sons, not daughters, correct?
I have 3 boys, yeah.
Do they still test them?
They do not. I do not have the BRCA gene. I
Okay.
don't have the gene, but then you actually can have a marker, but I don't have that gene. So that was the first question out of my sister's mouth is, what is your genetic testing show? So when you're HER2 positive, it is its own type of cancer. It's not related to a specific gene that you already have in your body.
And you said you have one more treatment coming up?
I have one more treatment this Friday, so that is a very big thing to celebrate in my mind. So no matter how bad I feel after this next treatment, it just gets better from there. I'm on my exit plan from chemo. So
will there be surgery?
There'll be surgery. At first, I was told I need to do a double mastectomy, and that, in some circles, is the gold standard of breast cancer care. And by care, you're really talking about reducing or eliminating reoccurrence. And that's really the name of this whole game is what do I do to shut this down and reduce reoccurrence? But now I'm having a few lymph nodes removed under my arm unless they find something, that they didn't expect when they do that. So I've gone from a mastectomy, which means, expanders and reconstruction, a very long, arduous road, a lot of trauma to your body, to an outpatient surgery.
How long do you have to wait between the final chemo and the surgery?
Yeah, we've got 3 weeks. So 3 weeks is sort of the magic number for the chemo regime I'm on, because after about 3 weeks, like this week is my really good week because I feel fine. By the time you get to that 3rd week, you pretty much feel like yourself again.
All right, and how long is the recovery coming out of that surgery? Should
be short, 10 days kind of thing. It'll be quite similar to what I did when I did the biopsy, so it was nice to have that frame of reference. It's more about soreness in that case and, working on range of motion on the arm where they did the removal. So short window after that. And then initially they told me I would do 4 weeks of radiation. And the purpose of the radiation, they'll radiate both breast. And the idea there is you're sterilizing the breast and killing any cells that hid from everything during all this, if they survived. So now I'm at 2 weeks of radiation.
Okay, so you are doing that then?
Doing radiation, doing the 2 weeks.
Does that make you feel sick or no?
They say it makes you feel fatigued, and anything over 3 weeks is my understanding. That's when you start getting where you burn on your skin. So again, incredibly fortunate to have that short regime there of radiation. So,
and then what comes after the surgery and you're on the road to recovery? Then what's next? Just the annual checkups?
They'll monitor me with frequent scans after that during this first year. I'll continue to get the drug Herceptin for a year. Because
is that a pill?
It'll be an infusion. Yeah, it'll be an infusion, but it's compared to 7 hours of chemo. Having an hour drip of Herceptin will seem like nothing, and there's not the side effects from Herceptin like chemo. So I'll have that for a year, which again just keeps all these cells feed off of a protein. Herceptin shuts that protein absorption process down. It blocks it in that cell. So that'll continue for a year. May have to take some hormone suppressants. My cancer is estrogen sensitive, is what they call it. So because of my age, I don't produce a lot of estrogen anyway, but I'll probably still take some form of a estrogen suppressant there just to not give those cells any opportunity to do anything else.
Well, you know that sharing your story today has a huge impact,
Oh,
especially since you are kind of high profile in the community.
Thank you.
And we certainly appreciate you coming out today. Do you think that moving forward that you'll become not a speaker for breast cancer, but a lot of women may look to you for help?
Right. Yeah, I have a friend of mine that's working with me on, what is my next chapter? What is my next professional chapter? Definitely know there's a part 2 after I get through this treatment. And that, by definition, that's going to be part of the story. I've also told him I don't want this to define me, but I also want to own it and use what I've learned to help other people. And it's just like what you're doing, Amy, with the buddy check. It raises that awareness. Every time I hear that, every month, all these, this past year, I'm reminded to do that. The piece that I wasn't doing was checking my lymph nodes under my arm. So I've added something in my mind of what I will always check going forward. But I think it will be part of my story for sure.
Right, and that's a great reminder. We do buddy check, and we always say check the breast, but we don't ever think. Until somebody comes along, it's a constant education in what you should do moving forward. And then, of course, I guess the mammograms obviously will continue.
Right, for sure. Yeah, they'll continue with that. And then, they do the full body scan to make sure it's nowhere else. And that is your biggest breath holding moment after you're diagnosed, is confirming that it's not in your bones, your liver, that it's nowhere else in your body. That's not always true for everyone. So again, I just was so fortunate to catch it this early. Even in the most obtuse way that I caught it, but very fortunate to have caught it before it had a chance to do more.
So your prognosis after all this is good compared to what you learned when you first were diagnosed.
Right. Yeah, much better than what I thought it was in the front end. After he mentioned 5 years when that first physician spoke to me, that's kind of all. I didn't hear anything else after that. It's like, what do you mean 5 years? What he meant was the goal is to get you to the 5-year mark with no reoccurrence. And then after you get to that 5 years, then your chance of reoccurrence drops dramatically. So it's that 5-year window of really keeping close tabs, monitoring it, taking the drugs that they give you to keep that shut down long enough that it doesn't have the chance to go anywhere else.
What's your best piece of advice for those who may end up with a diagnosis like this or who may be going through it now?
Yeah. That initial diagnosis, just let yourself weep and grieve. There is no other word than grief of what you feel. You just feel so disconnected from your reality, and everything you thought was true all of a sudden doesn't feel true. And that is real, and you've got to just process and work through that. So accept the grief and allow yourself to grieve. I use the word heartbroken over and over. I was heartbroken to sell our business. I was heartbroken to know that first flight to Houston, looking in the rearview mirror, watching this, Bay County behind me, that I was not going to be the same person when I came back. And I'm not. And that's not a bad thing, but let yourself process all that. Give yourself the time and the emotional and spiritual and mental space to wade through all those emotions. And they really do simmer down. It doesn't feel like it. It took me weeks before I could get the words to come out of my mouth to tell someone about my diagnosis without getting choked up and saying, I'm sorry, you need to give me a minute. But it does get better. And as you learn, you start owning it, and you get to a whole different place where you're able to cope.
Did your faith play a role in your recovery?
Oh, definitely, for sure. And does certainly today. I tell people when we flew back from MD Anderson, when I got what I felt like was my final diagnosis, okay, this is real and I can't change it. I didn't have a feeling that we needed to sell our business. I had a knowing. And it was a knowing, and that is bizarre after all of the time that we've been in the restaurant business, and been McDonald's franchisees, to decide in a course of 24 hours that it was time to sell. So within that 24 hours, I'm talking to the CPA and the attorney and the finance guy, figuring out what that looked like. So that point of not questioning that and having that knowing really was the springboard for every decision beyond that. And getting to the point where I go to chemotherapy and I sit in that chair and I get choked up, not because I'm scared or don't want to do it, which those things are true, but because I'm so grateful that there is something that will give me life, and that God has blessed me in a way that I'm in a position to make that happen and get that treatment. Just beyond grateful there. So yeah, it's just been a very convicting process, and it's that be still my soul. I'm not a real still person. And this has really given me a chance and made me realize I need to be still. And I need to spend some time, with God, and I need to spend some time with my own soul, and examining where I am and what's next, and letting that define what's next for me.
Well, I've known you for a long time, and you've always been a strong community leader, but and you've always been an inspiration, but now even more so. I can't even thank you enough for sharing your story.
Well, I'm very happy to share it. I appreciate it. And please, if someone wants my personal information, feel free to reach out to me through Facebook Messenger, whatever works for you. I'll be glad to offer you a listening ear or any support you need.
Well, get that last chemo and get this over with, and get back to doing what you're going to do, because I know there are more things ahead for Tracy Johnstone.
Thank you.
All right, Tracy, thanks for being with us today.
Welcome. Thanks.
And we want to thank everybody as well at home or at work, wherever you may be watching us from, on mypanhandle.com or our Facebook page. Thank you always for tuning in. We hope that you've learned something today. And ladies and men, but more ladies, don't forget to do your body check. I'm Amy Hoyt. We'll see you next time.